is a general term we use to describe systems that are trying to manage and operate things. For example, this turbine in a power production facility. But it could also be in the production floor of every big factory out there. Now, OT is about machine-to-machine communication. OT is about control. IT, on the other hand, is about data, how to generate, collect, analyze, and with cybersecurity, how do we defend data? And an interesting question is, do we defend control the same way that we defend data? And what happens when we mix both of them? Now, we need to consider this because OT is evolving. What started as an in-place, inside a factory, never to be connected to the outside world, to run the shop floor, has now evolved into critical infrastructure, grids, data center, buildings, transportation. And when we say smart, we usually talk about OT. For example, smart grid, smart city, smart nation. And even if we go back to the industrial enterprise, this turbine I talked about is now connected to the cloud because sensors are collecting information and we do predictive maintenance to know that the turbine is going to fail before it happens. The problem is OT was never designed to be connected. So if you look at the technology itself, it has no authentication, no authorization, and there's no encryption in the network itself. In fact, if you decide to install an agent of security, you face the problem of outdated operating system, and sometimes you can even void the warranty if you install something. But that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is that for the hundreds of different OT vendors out there, each has its own proprietary and unique protocol. So we have a problem of language. We don't really know how to understand the information flows in the network. And if you don't understand the language, you don't have visibility. And if you don't have visibility, everything else in cybersecurity can't really happen. Now, even the thought of how to attack the IT versus how to attack OT is not exactly the same. For example, in IT, we talk about the idea of lateral movement. So the attacker has a control of one machine. He doesn't have the data that he wanted, so he's going to do lateral movement to a new machine to search for this data. OT is not about data. OT is about control. And because in the OT network, no authentication, no authorization, and no encryption, each node in the system can tell each other node to change the firmware, change the parameters, or to do a reset. So lateral movement is not really necessary in OT. Now, in IT, we have a barrage of different technologies, and we just need to choose what we believe. Maybe it's anomaly detection, maybe it's deception. In OT, we have none. Again, this is because of language. Now, I'm not the only one who understands this. Attacker has figured out years ago. So from about 0 attacks in 2010, we are now, this is US figures, about 1 attack per day on a plant or a production facility. And there are many different attackers and many different motivations, from nation states all the way to cyber criminals. To give an example, the Ukraine attack. Nadav mentioned it before. So it actually attacks, before there were 2 attacks. There was one in December 2015, one in December 2016. The attack itself is not really interesting. You get into the network and you send the command to open the circuit breakers. That's it, no more electricity. The interesting part on the technology side was how they made sure the circuit breaker is going to remain open. And they did it by sabotaging the uninterruptible power supply. So the Ukraine engineer didn't have the power to turn on the power. Now, you might say that this is a nation state. You need nation state capabilities to do this kind of attack. So here's another example. This is a sysadmin, an IT admin with no knowledge on IT. He got fired. He wanted to get even, and he used his access to sabotage OT without really understanding what OT is. Millions of dollars in damages in this case. Now, some good news. After 2 years and a few dozen of researchers, going one by one, all these different protocols. By the way, not all are IP-based, some are serial. Now in Team8, we have clarity that allows you to show and really understand the language. So we solved the language barrier, and now you have visibility. Once you have visibility, you can do the regular things you usually do with IT. For example, you can notice when there's a new node in the control network. You can notice when somebody is changing the firmware and what was the change. You can understand what's going on when an outside vendor connects to your network to do an upgrade. Usually, you wouldn't know what's going on. You can do automatic asset management, and you can do, of course, anomaly detection or any other type of detection that you need to find an attacker inside the network. So good news. Once you know how to speak the language, you're back to the paradigms of IT. You can see what's going on, then you understand it, and then you can secure. Now, a final word about the future of OT. The future of OT is something called industrial IoT. This is not the regular IoT we talked about today, but industrial IoT. And industrial IoT are newer devices, and they do have authentication and authorization and encryption. However, it's still a proprietary language. And when you combine a proprietary language with encryption, then there's no hope for an outsider, a third-party vendor, to have visibility. So we go back to the same problem. So I would advise that if you're going to incorporate industrial IoT into your OT system, check not only the OT control aspect of it, but also does it have the possibility in the future to allow visibility to manage whatever security needs you're going to have in the future. Thank you.